All right, greetings and salutations. Happy Tuesday. Sorry about yesterday. It was just one of those days. I feel like I've been having a lot. I feel like I've been having a lot of those days recently, but hopefully I can all that is behind us now. I've been wanting to for a long time now put together kind of a single sort of document of a bunch of stuff that I use in my games, and that I've talked about on the channel at various points in time. But up until now, I really haven't had a document where I could say, like, here it is, go here. Some things I've just sort of put out on their own, or they've become kind of their own thing, if you will. But then I thought there's kind of a lot of stuff that I could probably do each as their own piece, but I want to kind of put together in one doc. And this will show up at some point. It'll obviously patrons and those folks will get a hold of it, and it'll also end up. Probably I'll do something similar where I'll have a plain text version that'll be free, and then if you want to have a typeset version that'll take me more time and effort to do, then maybe put that up for a couple of bucks. I'm not sure, but I'm still going through and sort of writing it up just kind of in Word document form. And I don't. It's one of the things where I wish I had. I wish I had organized things better, or had organized things at all, because I'm tending to kind of go through things and pick out. I don't have everything. I wish I had I guess for my own games, I haven't really had sort of a game Bible where just all my stuff. Like I wish I'd had one of those, like Planet Eris, I think is a famous one, and there's some other ones where someone put together this kind of doc and did that. All my stuff's in bits and pieces, kind of flown all over all over the place, very much disorganized. So I'm kind of going through things. As they sort of as I sort of find them in my notes or just kind of run across them. The part I was working on, I'd like to use a DEF CON system for alert levels. I don't know, I always like DEF CON just as a terminology, though obviously its implications are scary in the real world. But DEF CON 1, DEF CON 2, I don't know, that always, maybe those 80s kind of movies, I'm not sure where it came from, but I always like, so I use that in the dungeons. Bo can empathize with me. Yeah, I got stuff scattered all around. So I got to kind of remember where stuff is, or remember fragments of it that were in my brain, because I never really wrote them down. I just kind of had them. Sometimes you internalize stuff, so you're just like, oh yeah, I know what that is, and then they kind of fade away. So the other part of it is just for myself, so I can kind of have all the stuff. In terms of the DEF CON levels, if you're not familiar with them, 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. And I've been using that to kind of help structure a little bit the encounter checks and give them a kind of a ramping, I suppose, tension flow, so that over time in the dungeon it's going to get kind of nastier, and potentially nastier things will show up as you get into higher DEF CON levels. And of course, more encounter checks are done as the DEF CON levels rise, that kind of thing. So I wrote that up, put in here a little bit earlier. But I always like these videos, even though I don't oftentimes. I'm always impressed, I guess I should say, by the folks who will stream their creating stuff and really get a lot of creation done, because I don't, but I still appreciate it. I like doing the streams, I should say, because it forces me to talk through the things I've written down, which will then help, because folks will come up with questions, and those questions are awfully great for clarifying things, and often having to speak them aloud to someone it's at kind of another level. Like, writing it down is one thing, that's great, but I think even though I'm sort of talking and no one other than chat, I'm just speaking out, and no one's kind of, I can't see people's faces, obviously I can't, but just kind of talking out, it's almost like I get to say it to myself in a way. It's like bouncing it off kind of thing, and I kind of receive it a little bit, because I try to see it from the viewer's perspective, from your perspective, try to look at it and then I oftentimes will go, oh well, maybe I need to clarify that, or oh yeah, this is really good, or oh no, maybe this is not what I meant when I'm writing it down. Bo says they used to use D percentile for determining NPC or faction actions, while at the table they switched to a D12 instead. Yeah, the number, the dice, I've been on a whole D6 kick for a while now, so I like to do things in kind of D6s. But, whatever dice get you there, the percentile dice is great, because you get, I guess with percentile dice, you get the most increments that I think you need, right? in that you get 1%, right? 1% through 100. I don't think you need finer increments than that for this stuff. Obviously, when you get down to something like a D6 or a D4, you're getting down to big kind of chunks of percentages. But I find that ultimately, like even a 1 in 6, whatever, it's 16% chance. I mean, it's pretty low. And for a lot of things, I think that's kind of enough. Sure, it'd be great sometimes, like, ooh, I'd like it to be 8%, or maybe 4%. And then, of course, you can always use your percentile dice. But I've found that kind of D6s and their kin have been attractive to me of late in this case. As MechCheck says, D666 gets 216 options. Yeah, one time I tried to lay out a D666 table, and it just seemed like it was way more than I needed. I like the D66, which I think gives you 36, right? Because 36 times 6 would give you 216. 36 options is pretty good. Yeah, you can do a D66, and those are fine. I end up just finding that you end up just blocking out a lot. Like, okay, this whole block of it's going to be nothing, But having those finer increments, I think, can be very handy. You can get higher than 100 as MechJack, just 216. It just seems to be that's a lot. I mean, I guess if you got it, and now I suppose you can, you could probably put together several tables and then multiply them out to get 216 kind of options. But I don't know. Do I ever feel like I need 216 options? I don't. I'm also someone, a lot of this stuff is really going to come down to your preferences as a GM. It seems to be what's in vogue oftentimes I see now are these very specific encounters. Right. So you'd say, I think one that's come up a few times. I know one, I forget what adventure was, kind of got dinged because they had these encounters, but you could get them more than once. So it was like, okay, 4 goblins sitting around a table playing poker. And you're like, well, that's great, right? And I always think, well, that's great the first time I get it. Assuming the context makes sense that the goblins are playing poker. Like it might not if the party's been on a rampage and they've burned down half the tower or wherever these goblins are hanging out and screaming, and you get in this room and it's like, oh yeah, they're playing poker. Okay. But then the next time you get that, suddenly it's not. And I don't find those types of encounters that engaging for me as a GM, because I think I can come up with that. Like in the moment for me, okay, 4 goblins, and my question is, oh, what are they doing? And I can think about it and say, okay, right? I'll use the contextual types thing, or I'll try to. Okay, the party, they slipped in the door unseen or unnoticed, right? It's this kind of surprise situation. The goblins, this is what kind of room is it? Oh, it's the guards. It's a guard room. Okay, so they're sitting around a table. They're doing, like, I can riff on that. And if it's somewhere else, I can riff on that. So for me, the added detail of apart from the 4 goblins, like the sitting around a table playing poker, unnecessary to me. And I'd find that probably as often as I would use that just as it appears, I would have to change it. And if I have to change it a bunch of times, then to me, it's not that useful to have, to me. But a lot of people like that. And those big tables, you're going to kind of a big table, like 216 things. And that's probably what I would want on it. I would need it, because otherwise, how the heck am I going to fill 216 entries? I would need a whole bunch of kind of sort of really specific things, with the idea being that you're probably only going to run into those once, or your first time in. And then after that, just by virtue of it's a giant table, there's a really good chance that you can roll on that a bunch of times and never get that result again. Bo says they find themselves not needing the units die, but still wanting the crit fail success with D12. Oh, I get you. McJack says they use a 7776 table for random names to keep variety while getting names on the fly. What is a 7776 table, McJack? I am not at all familiar with that. And the other thing is you can roll things like morale and motivation and you can roll morale, and which you should be doing anyway, at least for me, you want to roll morale and kind of you can use that morale as sort of a meter. Because I know morale is generally just like, oh, they run away or they don't run away, but it can be kind of more than that. And if to me, it could tell me sort of how. I should probably write this up in here because I use it quite a bit, but I don't think I've had it written out. So maybe I should do that. Maybe I will do that. All right. What am I doing here? So this was DEF CON. This Got to remember that's where it's heading to. So let me put another heading here. And I'm just in Word because it's convenient. Morale as starting disposition. So morale is generally, right, by default, it's a 2d6 roll. Is a 2d6 roll against a target number specified in a creature's stat block. If the result of the roll is more than the creature's morale number, it will flee. This is, let's see. I like to roll for a creature's starting morale before hostilities to gauge its disposition and readiness to fight or act aggressively. Okay, there we go. That's what I'm talking about. I wonder, is there a different view? I don't need the margins. I'm sure there is. I really dislike Word. Now that's weird. All right, let's try this view. That just gives me so much white space. I don't want outline. Print, read. That's it. I don't want that. All right, let's try this view. Can I zoom in on it? There we go. Okay. So let's insert a toggle. I'm going to need, I don't know if I need 3. Well, maybe I'll have 3. Let's say I'll put in. And now let us, ooh, look at that. I've been using this one, so I'll just keep that one. Okay. So it's a 2d6 roll. And this will be its general disposition. And then aggression level. So basically, the reason why I like to use this is if you have somebody, they're starting out, their morale is low, right? In combat, obviously, if their morale is low. So in combat, let me put it this way. Morale is used in combat against the morale number. The morale number on the stat block tells you essentially how likely these creatures are to flee or act defensively or just whatever they're going to do. So if you roll when things happen, and usually, it's something negative to them. So some number of them go down. If maybe you take out a leader or you do something else, then you would, wherever you feel like it matters, you would roll that morale. And if the creatures have very low morale, then there's a good chance they're just going to cut and run or surrender or act defensively, so on and so forth. But that's only during combat. There's not, you can play a creature's morale. You could look at it as an encounter unfolds. You could look at a creature's morale and try to determine something about it, but it's kind of hard because one, all the creatures of a given species are going to have the exact same morale. So if, I don't know, goblins, whatever, their morale is like 7 or something, which I guess is kind of average. So then it doesn't really tell you too much. But if they had low morale as a group, what does that mean? Does it mean that they're going to just run away as soon as you hit them all the time? Does it mean, or I guess I should say, what does it mean outside of the combat part? Sure, in combat, they're going to run away as soon as you hit one of them. But outside of combat, how does that reflect? How does that reflect their attitude? And you can't really say too much. But what you can do is maybe say, like, are they, in this moment, their morale is low So they're going to act more timid, scared. Are they going to bow up because even though they really don't have a lot of morale, they're really not going to, they're not going to stand and fight, but maybe they're going to try to act really tough to kind of smoke screen you with toughness. Like they're going to act really braggadocious because you rolled high on that morale, even though their morale number is low, so that this braggadociousness they're doing is patently false, but they're hoping you buy it because they don't want to fight you, but they don't want you to know that, right? So you can use, so that's why I kind of like to roll the same. Obviously, the higher the roll is, the more potentially just, I guess, confident and potentially aggressive they might be, even if their combat morale doesn't warrant it. It's like the little, you got some huge Great Dane or Pit Bull or something, and some little Chihuahua is just yapping at him tremendously. You know that if it actually came down to it, the little Chihuahua's toast. But the Chihuahua was putting up that good game. It rolled high on its morale. Another Chihuahua in that same situation might act totally, differently. So on and so forth. You could probably, there probably would be something to do. Maybe that's the thing to do, is to add, now I'm thinking about it. I don't know if that would make sense, because I could do a D6. So the morale numbers are, I got to think this out, because I've just been kind of using it, but now I'm wondering, I guess there are two things in mind. When I would just use this myself, I've just been rolling a flat number, 2d6, and I've been using that. Now I'm thinking, would it be worthwhile to do, some number plus their morale? Now, there are creatures that have a morale of 12. Oftentimes, these are kind of elite forces that will never retreat, never retreat, never surrender. That's kind of them. In that case, you'd end up with a big number regardless. So maybe I won't do that, because I think that just because you're never actually going to retreat, it's like the like the cooler in why am I Roadhouse? The cooler in Roadhouse, right? It's Patrick Swayze as the cooler in Roadhouse. He's the last person that wants to fight. So he's acting very gentlemanly, trying to avoid a fight at all costs. But of course, when the fight comes down, he's going to, tear your throat out with his hand and throw it in the nearest water source. So he would be someone who you might say, okay, they rolled really low on morale, or maybe you just make a note that their morale is they're always going to be trying to avoid a fight, but once the fight comes, they're going to do it. So that would be another way to kind of maybe use this. Hey, they're confident, but they don't want to fight you. They don't want to fight you. But if you do, then woe betide you. So maybe I'll leave it on the 2d6 number. And of course, we get that it's not quite a bell curve. I forget exactly what they call it. It's bell-ish, because there's that 6, 7, 8. There's that sort of hump. I have to add some more in here. How do I do that? I know there's oh, you're not going to let me. I guess I got to go back to. I don't. This view stinks. No. There we go. Sorry, I tried. It's just not working. There we go. See, now I get, getting rid of the UI stuff to maybe not the best thing. Okay, so 9, 10. And I'll figure out how to bell curve it. Well, maybe we can actually, we can take a field trip to any dice. Let me see. Let us embrace at last. I think I had some stuff in here already. I did have some stuff in here, but I will get rid of that. So we got output 2d6. I think will work, right? So there's it. It's not quite a bell curve. Humperdinck, Humperdinck, Humperdinck. Not quite. This is just some clear, cool water for the working man. My ice is already melted. It's about 90 some odd degrees here in New York City. Hot as balls, as they say. So here we got this hump. It is not quite a bell curve. If we wanted I think you get a real bell curve. You get that. That, I think, is your true bell curve. And I don't know. I only know from listening to others. I don't know for myself. I'm not sure, because it's got this, the peak is too sharp. I don't know. I think 2d6, I find that 2d6 tends to be enough for me. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with 3d6. And 3d6 does have that nice mirroring bit if that's where your attributes come from. So I like sometimes rolling the 3d6. Something Daniel uses in his game is he'll do like roll X amount of d6 under your attributes, and then the more difficult task is you have to roll more dice, so it ends up popping it up, right? So you might start with an ordinary task. You might say roll 3d6 under your intelligence. Then it's something rocket science or something might be roll 5d6 on your intelligence. I thought that worked out pretty well. Any case, all right. So 2d6. Now let's see if we want to segment this out a bit. Maybe. So this would be, whoops. Let's see. So. Okay, so 2d6, if we take 2, 3, and 4, and we block those together, that's about a 16%. That's the same as a 1 in 6 chance. And I'm not sold on these numbers yet. So we want greater than 6. I think we can do an and, or is it and? 2d6 less than 9, which should be, all right, 6, 7, 8. 42% chance. And then, oh, wait a minute. Less than 5, greater than, oh, wait a minute. No, greater than 6 should be greater than 5. Okay. Right? 2, 3, 4. Oh, and I'm missing 1. I don't have 5 is not covered. Let's see what is 5. What is 2d6 equal to 5? A lot of good. What does that give us? 11%. Well, let's see. If I did this, 2 and 3, and then, and by the way, I'm here for your guys' questions. So if you have any questions, comments, greater than 3 and 2d6 less than 6, named 4 and 5. Oh, yeah, 2, 3, right? So we got to write this 4. 8, 25, 52, and then we can mirror it on the other side, which would be, let's see, greater than 9 and 2d6 less than 11, named 9, 10, and then output 2d6 greater than 10, named 11 and 12. So it should give us a kind of like we get 1, 2, 3. So we get 4. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 different options. So one we can make kind of timid, whatever, kind of a confident, maybe overconfident, and maybe rash. If we want kind of our. So I think those are some good numbers. Okay. So that'll give us a nice, we can go back to our chart. So actually we can kind of reduce this. We got 2 to 3, 4 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 10, 11 to 12. And then I think what we can do if we. All right. Timid, scared. I guess maybe is that even. I guess it would be normal. confident. I'll have to come up with some words. Hey, here's a number. Hey, Tristan. I'll have to come up with some different words. But this is sort of the scale that I use. Again, it's something I kind of just do in my brain. So I don't, labels are great. You don't tend to need labels yourself. Like, oh, 2 to 3. Like they're not looking for a fight, right? Maybe I'll just will avoid hostilities at all costs. Maybe that's a better way to put it. And then, this one is extremely aggressive. Eager. Yes. Eager is a good, maybe somewhere in there. I don't know if confident, I'll have to say. This is where you have to go through. This is where the thesaurus something comes in handy where you can just rip through a bunch of different things. They kind of mean the same thing if you sort of shade them. Find out. But essentially, we can roll. Now, if you wanted to, we could. I don't know if there's. I know there are books and things that have gone through the monster manual and kind of, I think, have studied some of these things. If you'd like to. If you'd like to use this roll, that's not the right word. If you'd like to modify the results of this roll with the creature's combat morale rating, let's see, the following procedure might work. All right. I'm just going to use, I think I'm just going to use unordered list. If the creature's morale is 5 or below, roll an extra die and use the lowest possible. Right? Yeah, and use the lowest combination of 2 dice, aka, roll it kind of with advantage kind of thing, and then is 10 or above the highest. Bloodthirsty. The problem with so Tristan points out 12 is kind of bloodthirsty. The creature will attack on sight without provocation. Yeah, that's. I think I don't know if I want to have that because remember we might have these. I guess I want to keep aggression. I don't want to get. I don't want to. I don't want to make it combat focused necessarily because you could have you could have a shopkeeper who is you roll up and they're 12, so they're extremely aggressive, but they're not looking to kill you, right? But they maybe what they are looking to do is that they're going to press every advantage that they have, and they're not going to right. They're gonna. I'm trying to even think of the words to use. Right, they're going to be very aggressive. They will become hostile, but remember, hostile can mean different things. That's kind of why I like using hostile at this point, because a shopkeeper can be hostile, and so can the Goblin Chief's elite guard. But they're going to be hostile for the shopkeeper means something very different than hostile for the Goblin Chief's elite guard. So I like the idea of without provocation. Yes. So I'm going to put that in there. Extremely aggressive. without provocation. I will have to ponder these because, like I said, this is the, and I recommend it. Like I was mentioning a few minutes ago, stuff that you may think in your brain, ideas you have floating around. Write them down. Hey, write them down while they're fresh, so you don't end up in a situation where I'm trying to remember things that have been kind of in my brain. My home game's been on hiatus for a while, so stuff that I used to be really in tune with, I've been losing because I just haven't, that part of my brain hasn't really been using. That's true. Combative is another thing. Yep. Though combative, I'll put it in here for now, but combative does have like like your antagonistic, which they don't have to be antagonistic per se. The shopkeeper who is that extremely aggressive isn't necessarily trying to be combative, but they're going to be they're going to be let's see, what's the word I'm looking for? They're going to be focused on their interests and maybe exclusively. I don't know if even this makes sense, but I'm just, we're just we're just gonna hash it out. Combative, I don't want to mean that they're like, because I don't, one of the things I'm always trying to avoid is anything that gives rise to the always, I think it should be a trope. I think it is a trope. I don't know if you could mention it, but the kind of the townsfolk hate the adventurers no matter what trope, which I've fallen into as a player, and I know I've done it accidentally as a GM, where basically all the townsfolk just treat you like scum, like you're scum, even though you just saved the village. You go into the tavern, they're like, "What do you want?" And it's like, hey man, didn't I just save your guys bacon for the third time? Why are you treating me like this? Like I'm some kind of third class citizen, kind of thing. But I do want that if you rolled up somebody and that they were, this focus on interest probably isn't. I'll probably have to tweak that out later, but. What I don't want is just to mean that everybody's just out there like trying to just be mean. But what I do mean is that they're really aggressive. So the shopkeeper, you come in to sell some stuff you got from the dungeon, that shopkeeper's gonna try to hit you with the lowest. They're gonna try to grind you down because they're like, you know what? For whatever reason, they are super confident, right? They're just like, they have the idea that you could take your business elsewhere or that you could fight them. Like, doesn't enter their mind. They're gonna try to nickel and dime you or whatever, make the play and say, oh my gosh, this gem's worth a lot, but they don't know it's a lot, so I'm gonna do that. And you can use, the thing is, you can use this in, you could use this little system here with alignment and other things. Obviously, if it's a lawful shopkeeper, that's going to change the way they approach things. Maybe they'll give you they wouldn't try to play on the fact that you don't know kind of thing, but maybe they'll try to give you the lowest possible market value for it. If they're going to make an estimate or whatnot, they're going to, we could give you the high, we could give you the median, or we could give you the low end. They're going to go for the low end, right? They're going to drop. Doesn't mean they're going to act nasty to you. And that's why I don't love combative necessarily. Doesn't mean they're going to be nasty. Predatory. Yes. Thank you. That's actually the perfect word. Thank you. Better than mine. Right. Yes, they're gonna act in a predatory way to the limits of their morality and whatnot. Doesn't mean that the kindly whatever who rolls a 12 isn't necessarily gonna whatever, but hey, for whatever reason on that day, she's looking for hers. Antagonistic, not necessarily. Like, again, I don't know that the shopkeeper that's trying to do that is being antagonistic. They're just looking for their own. Whereas that to me is a reaction kind of role, right? The reaction of a negative reaction is antagonistic would be one where they don't like you. This is not about, see, the point about, I guess, to separate, this is the kind of point out, maybe I need to write this down, right? This is kind of a morale thing. This has nothing to, this number here, what you're doing is basically has nothing to do with the PCs. This is before the PCs have showed up. Like, what is the right? If you imagine that the morale, the party, to keep using our kind of shopkeeper example, the party's about to enter a shop. You roll the morale. This is kind of what is the shopkeeper's disposition just on the day, in the moment. It doesn't have anything to do with the party yet. So it's not a reaction to the party. It's Bo says it. They've been chewing on it for 15 minutes, kept visualizing a smiling shark, but knew loan shark was the correct. Yeah, but the smiling shark is actually a really good, like that in Finding Nemo, where they befriend those sharks. Yeah, Teresa says natural dream. Right, in that moment. Doesn't mean they're always like that. And having this kind of bell-ish curve will mean that most times folks will fall into that normal range where they'll be all right, right? And then if you want to use creatures morale, whatever. But this is kind of like what are they like today in this moment before the party even shows up. And then you can roll this, and then you can roll reaction, and then you can get some things like they hate the party, but they're timid and scared. So how do they react? Yeah, right. The shark named Bruce. Yeah. How do they react? So you can get these interesting combinations of, okay, I rolled up with sort of the not totally antagonistic, like not the absolutely most hostile, but kind of like they don't like the party, but they're also kind of timid. So they're not going to like the party, but they're also not going to want to fight the party at any cost. And so that gives you like these two things that you can kind of shade your encounter with. And again, I want it to operate not just in a potentially hostile thing or combat type thing like in a dungeon, but it could be in a town, in a tavern, somebody being on the street, so on and so forth. And I just kind of use the morale roll like this, but I've never had to think about what it would look like if I was handing this off to somebody else. That's kind of part of the exercise, right? As I'm writing these down where I could potentially hand off to you, for you to use. So for me, in my brain, I would just go like, oh yeah, 2 to 3, 4, like whatever that number is, like, okay, and then figure it out. Now I'm forced to kind of make these more formal in a way that I never did before, which I think, like I said, I think it's a good exercise. If you haven't done it, do it. But I'm also, I'm here for you. So if you have questions, you don't have to be commenting on what I'm doing, though I'm happy to do that. If you've got something, oops, let me move this aside. I'm looking for a doc. If you've got something that you want to discuss, let's see, I was looking at something there. Oh, look at all those tabs. Woo, get those out of the way. Let's see, okay. Let me see if I can find what I'm looking for. Okay. I think I'll have to flesh those out, but I'm not trying to get everything done at the moment, so that's fine. I got the DEF CON stuff, I think, in a good spot for what I want. Got some of my distances and timekeeping. I suppose, I don't know where I want to put it, but let me put, well, what do I want to put in next? I am going to write, because people have asked me about my kind of hero dice system that I used in my home game. And that's going to be a part of this too, I think. I'm not sure. Well, I'm not sure. It might be. I might do it as its own thing. I might do it as part of this. I'm not entirely sure. It says this could lead to an interesting, quick NPC build. A D6 roll can that out. Absolutely, right. For me, I don't know if I need that, because I could just think about like, well, why are they angry today? Is it something? Are they just angry? I mean, it probably comes down to if it's a recurring NPC, right? Or if it's just like a one-time thing. If it's just a one-time guy, unless the party's going to ask about it, then you could do that. Though I think for me, that's the kind of thing that I'm happy to leave it up to some kind of oracle or just kind of high-low in the moment. But yeah, if there's someone who's going to be important, or if you think like they're going to be potentially dropping, say, some kind of plot hook or something out, like they might have something for the party to do or ask them a favor or whatnot, wherefore, then it probably makes sense to figure out, are they just angry by nature, or is something making them angry? And it's also going to be, I guess, table dependent. Are your players going to ask those questions? If your parties are the ones that are going to want to find out, like, why are you angry? What are you angry at? Good sir, why are you treating us thus? Is something bothering you that we can handle for you for a small fee? Then you'll probably want to know whether they're just like, piss off, or like, oh, I've got a sore tooth, or, goblins kidnapped my daughter, so on and so forth. Oh, your screen's too small to follow the details, Bo. No problem. No problem. Keep stocking the alcohols. So yeah, you could totally add another role onto this one if it behooved you to do so. I'm trying to see in another window here if I can find. Let's see where. What was this? What was this one? Oh yeah, I think my hero dice might need to do that as its own thing. I think that might be beyond the scope. Of what under? What is this? Oh, not it. Additional. Yeah, I had these. I'll show these off. I didn't actually use this too much, to be quite honest, but I'll show them because why not? Let me just I'll have a couple of things. Yeah. All right. I'll pull these up and we can look at them. Okay. Let me get these out. I don't know where they're going to fit. So there was this I did. So are we seeing this? Yeah. Okay. I think you got this on screen. All right. So this was something I worked at for my game. I don't remember if they really got too much use. This was for a BX style game, but we were using our basic rule set was Lamentations of Flame Princess at the time. And it's actually been quite a while since I looked at these, so I can read my own work. Obviously, even though this is several years old, quite a few years old at this point, it's still in beta. Just, FYI. All right, so these were additional combat actions unless otherwise noted. See, yeah, no, it's typo. There we go. Typo noted. Any class can engage in any of these actions. So these were not limited to fighters. I think at the time we were playing this. So the one thing to know about this game, which will help with the context, this was a play-by-post game. So with play-by-post, I think one of the things to recognize is that you have more time. You have time, and so obviously they go at a slower pace. You're playing by post, so it's asynchronous. I'm going to post an action, and then let's just say I'm the GM for this example. I'm the GM. I will post a situation that requires your response, and then you will have a day, a couple days, depending on different games will set their cadences, but usually days, hours, some kind of open time where you get to put in your action before essentially the doors close, and whoever's put in actions will go, and whoever hasn't, whatever, and then up until that time, if you want to change it, you can, blah blah blah, all that stuff. So what this means is that during combat, I think you could be more tactical minded because you're not slowing the game down. If you're playing something in person or just synchronously, you're playing something whether it's online, in person, whatever, you have to. Speed is kind of something you want to be at least aware of. You don't want things to take too long. You don't want things to get bogged down. You don't want someone's taking their like in 5th edition or any kind of game where if you take your turn in combat and then it's an hour before your turn comes up again, like that is interminable slowness, something you want to avoid. If you're playing play by post, none of that stuff matters because you're waiting hours for your turn anyway. It's understood. It's kind of part of the charm, if you will. You're going to come in, you're going to write your action, and then it's going to be a day or 2 or 3 or even more until you find out what the result is. So you have a lot of freedom in there, I think, to be more tactically minded, if you will, to kind of get into the details because you're not impinging on anybody's time. If you have a bunch of tactical stuff that you're doing as an action, or having an action with multiple whatevers, you're not impacting another player's turn because everything's going to the GM referee, and then the referee's going to sort all that stuff out, and then we'll play it. So you can have a lot of these options that I haven't even, like I said, I haven't read these in a long time, so they're kind of pseudo fresh to me. But that's the context. So if you're reading stuff and thinking like, oh my gosh, I'd never want to do this in my game, you may be thinking this was an in-person game. It was not. It was a play-by-post. So some of these things, if they come off as being too not theater of the mind friendly or too whatever, it's because it was play-by-post. So you have a lot of time in there to hash things out before you need to put on a response, unlike a game that's synchronous where you need to do everything kind of on the fly. Not Terrence, sorry. Tristan says, play-by-post can tolerate really crunchy systems a bit better than in person. Yes. And I think if you're interested in really, I really like play-by-post. And I think if you're interested in, it really allows you to do some different things. You can get very much more descriptive. You can really, if you really want to get into your character, play-by-post is a great way to do it because you can write, if you want to write a long thing, you can write it because people have the time to read it. If you want to have something where you get to share sort of your character's internal monologue or really write out a lot of things, or really gives you a way to really flesh out your perspective in the game in a way, again, that's not impinging on other people's game. Because if you're another player and you're not interested, you can just speed to the bottom or just pick out the kind of, the actual actions that your character's doing. And you haven't wasted anybody's time. Whether if you did that in a synchronous game, you might find that people are rolling their eyes or whatever, but you don't have to worry about that. So yes, and the crunch, you don't have to. You have lots of time to figure out the crunch and moderate the crunch and do all that adjudication of the crunch. So it just has a different feel to it. And the kind of part of that, I was like, I would, some of that adjudicating the crunch is kind of what I always want. Really is the biggest thing I want from like a VTT is I just want it to be able to plug in extra crunch if I want it, and then it to take care of that crunch for me so that I can still be in the moment, but take advantage of the crunch. And I'm sure systems have done that. I just haven't delved into them enough because a lot of the other features I'm not super interested in, so I just haven't chased it. Okay, back to this. So with all that context, long story short, too late. All right, let's get into it. Additional combat actions. Unless otherwise noted, any class can engage in any of these actions. So the first one is distract. The character in melee range of a creature can use their action to try to distract it. On a successful charisma roll, the next attack on this creature is made either with a +2 bonus to hit or a +2 bonus to damage at the distracting player's choice. So basically, it's the help action. I don't even know if I'm sure I'd seen help action because this is not pre-5e or anything. But the distracting player gets to choose. I'm thinking of it now. Like, would I change that to the player who takes advantage of it? I'm not sure. So one of the things that now I'm remembering I tried to do. So these actions any class can do, but I tried to give the fighters extra oomph because I like fighters have their advantage. So while everybody can do that, fighters you're gonna tend to see for each one of these, I believe that a fighter is going to get a better version. So the whoever's distracting makes a charisma roll, which is to me is this idea of you're trying to distract them. So you got to get their attention. That to me is kind of charisma. You could probably change that to something else. Whatever. Like it's not that big of a deal. And then either +2 to hit or +2 damage, but not both. If you're a fighter, the distraction bonus is +4 at 4th level and +6 at 8th level. Basically, if you're a high level fighter or mid to high level fighter, you demand attention. So if you go to get it, then you can do that. And then creatures immune to illusions, other forms of trickery are not subject to it. So yeah, basically things like if they don't have eyes or whatever, if they're single folks enough that they're not even bothering with that stuff, then you can't use this on either because you are trying to, you're waving a red cape at the bull, and if the bull is not fooled by red capes, then that isn't. Inigo Montoya telling the Dread Pyroblast he isn't left-handed during the fight. I guess though, is that would you call that a distraction, or is that just kind of a brag? Not sure. And now a feint. So feinting. A fighter with multiple attacks may use their first attack to distract and then strike with their second attack. This is kind of an addendum. So that one, maybe the feinting would be more like it if you want to say that him telling the Dreadpire Roberts he was using off arm was a distraction. That's gonna do it. But you got to target the same creatures. So this is a nice way for a fighter, instead of taking 2 attacks, if they want, +4 or +6 or +2, something, they can try to get that. So I don't. And by the way, I did not check these particularly for balance. So I didn't do the maths on that. Hey, if +2 is not enough or it's too much, it was not something that was in front of mind. An instant of advantage. Well, then that would work as a feint. See it like that. All right, back to back. You and at least one comrade set yourselves with your backs to each other to cover each other's blind spots. This defense is not effective until all the participants have engaged in the action. Once engaged, as long as the formation is maintained, the participating creatures cannot be flanked or attacked from behind. So this is basically everyone puts their backs to each other and you can't get attacked. I suppose there should be some more verbiage in here about you can't move, right? You got to maintain the formation, which means you can't drop, you can't move out. Obviously, if somebody moves, then it's broken. So, I mean, and you could ask yourself, well, do we need this? You probably don't. But it was just something. Some of these I put in here because the players. I mean, a lot of these, the impetus was the party. The party's doing things, and I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. Whatever. Some of these, and I think for these, actually, it was more that I wanted to give them. I wanted to give them some kind of combat, some options to do in combat that were a little bit different. And I think some of these I threw in there because I thought, I'll throw this in here so they know it. So, and my games have tended to be low, not that many players. Like I think this game had 3 players in it, and they had some hirelings, but it was mostly the 3 of them. So it was not a situation where I 6 guys doing this. They're all 3 players. My games on hiatus was 2 to 3 players. Usually we would run with 2. If we had a full house, it was 3. So small groups. So a lot of the things I was doing in my games reflect the fact I was playing in small groups. So that probably has some context also. Okay, this is a drive back. You make a furious flurry of attack at your opponent. In exchange for attacking with a -2 penalty on a successful hit, you convert the damage from the blow into a forceful drive back. For every 2 points of damage rolled, you drive your target back 5 feet. If the target would be moved further back than 5 feet, you must have movement available to move in behind it, and you must do so. Any drive back suffered by a target does not count against their own movement. The target does not suffer damage from this attack. Fighters may partially convert damage to drive back. Any damage not converted is suffered by the target. So what does that mean? You attack with a penalty, a small penalty, but if you hit, whatever damage you roll is you're pushing the thing back. So you get to kind of make some space. But if you're going to move them back further than 5 feet, you have to move in the gap. You can't. This isn't a wuxia kung fu. You give him a chop and the guy flies back 20 feet and you're standing where you were. You could potentially, obviously, if you rolled 6 damage, that would be 15 feet, right? 5 feet per 2 points. And if you had something else, something bigger, maybe you could go further, but you're going to have to keep following up and you have to have the movement to do it. You can't, it's not like a blowback. This is you're up against them and you're just pushing them. I didn't do something for size. I think if I was going to take this and put this into my doc, which I probably will, I'll probably add something about sizes, in that either you're limited or it just takes more potential movement to push back things that are bigger and maybe less to do smaller, so that way you might be able to, at least if you're a high level fighter or you do a lot of damage or something, you could push back a very large creature, but it wouldn't be likely, something like that. And then let's see, we have hold the line. You try to anticipate your opponent's next move and strike preemptively, supply a trigger action, add +1 bonus to your initiative. You hold your attack until the triggering action takes place. If it does, you attack immediately before it. If your initiative exceeds that of your target, or immediately afterwards if your target wins initiative. If the triggering action does not take place, you lose your attack. You may not move and take the hold the line action. All right, so let's see if I can pick this one apart. So you are gonna roll initiative, but then you're gonna say, hey, the goblin, the goblin enters my threat range, whatever gets in front of me or in sword swinging distance, I'm gonna whack it, kind of thing. And you go, okay, you roll initiative. if you have win initiative with the goblin, then when the goblin steps into your sword swinging radius, you will hit it before it has a chance to do whatever it's doing. You got it. You got the jump on it. If not, then whatever it's going to do, it will do, and then you will take it. But if it doesn't do that, you're stuck. So there's a little bit of a gamble. If you pick something that's somewhat unlikely, then you don't do it. Tristan asks these. So were these rules a result of things your players want to do, and you decide to codify, or something you decide to make for your players to give them options? I think it's a bit of. I'm trying to remember. I think it's a bit of both. I think there were some things they were looking for, and as I was writing this out, I was just coming up with some options. So a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B is my recollection. That these were ones that were partly, and I think it's kind of one of the things, like I got on a roll a little bit of like, oh, here's something they wanted. Oh, here's this other thing I think is kind of cool. So it was a bit of both. A bit of both. A little bit of them kind of coming up with stuff, and a little bit of me sort of, not necessarily filling in a blank, but just thinking like, oh, maybe this is cool. And then we have the deliberate strike, which I guess is just for fighters. You attempt to strike with surgical precision. Anytime a fighter is subject to an initiative bonus, they may convert that bonus into a bonus to hit or a bonus to damage. Anytime a fighter is subject to an initiative bonus, they can convert it to a bonus to hit or a bonus to damage. I don't remember. Well, that's an interesting one. I kind of like it. Given that I created it, I kind of like it. But I'm trying to think, when was I handing out initiative bonuses? I don't remember if there was there something else going on where I was giving out initiative bonuses? Is there something in Lamentations about initiative bonuses? I actually happen to have the Lamentations book in front of me. And like I said, this was the base that we were using at the time. That's why I'm checking it as opposed to BX, because I know that this is what we were using. I don't know if there is. Is there one? Where's combat? All right, let's see. 56. Hold on here. I know this is riveting streaming as I'm looking at a book that you can't see. I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know where that initiative bonus would come into. But there you go. I'll probably have to rewrite one because I don't know. I'm not sure. Anyway, that is that document. And these will probably make their way in. I don't even remember how often they were used. I don't think it was dexterity bonus. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. My thought is I don't think so, but that's the thing. And that's kind of the interesting bit, right? Is I wrote up this doc, but I didn't keep whatever the context was for why I chose that as a thing. I don't recall it. So it's a bit of a mystery to me as to why. Let me see. And then the last one, so this was the original slotless spell casting that I developed for my game. It's kind of been, it morphed. So again, this was, I did something different for the hero dice system, which I mentioned on stream before. And if you're wondering what the heck hero dice is, I'll go through it. Probably another thing, because I'm writing it up. I'm writing up kind of an official, sort of more official version. But this was my first attempt at doing a slotless, getting rid of spell slots. What I wanted to do, so here's the concept was, I didn't just want to get rid of spell slots. I didn't want to replace spell slots with points. If I was going to have, I know they don't act exactly the same, but I wanted to get rid of it completely. I didn't want to trade one meta currency for another meta currency. Oh no, we don't have slots, we don't have points. I don't want that. I wanted something where we're going to use dice and things like that, and we would have no meta currency. So we'll read it, and you can judge. I will say that this was in that Lamentations play-by post game, and it was successful in terms of using it just for that game. That doesn't mean it's going to work for all things. It was not rigorous. It has not been rigorously play tested. It did work for me, which is about the best I can say about it in terms of it did kind of what I was wanting to do. The players were down with it. And, I think everyone was satisfied with how it worked. But again, one table, kind of one campaign, so to speak. So, it would probably be your miles may vary. Hey, Ian. Okay, so let's read it over here. So a spellcasting overview. Instead of a fixed number of spell slots, a magic user can repeatedly cast their spells if they succeed at a casting test using a matrix based upon the level of the spell and the level of the caster. If the magic user succeeds at the test, the spell is cast without consuming the memorized spell pattern. If the magic user fails the test, depending on the margin of failure, the success of the spell can be delayed, the spell can fail, and the spell can fail critically. Each of these negative outcomes will be explained below. All right, does that make sense? So here's the matrix, and it's very much like the cleric casting table. Rolling a 2d6. Whenever I'll just read it. The spellcasting matrix. Whenever a magic there's a little typo again. Whenever a magic user casts a spell, they test their skill against the matrix. The columns of the matrix represent the difference between the level of the spell, and the level of the caster. A negative number represents a spell that is below the level of the caster and thus easier to cast. 0 represents a spell at the same level of the caster, and a positive number represents a spell above the level of the caster, and so more difficult to successfully cast. All right, so we get that. So if we can picture, this is a relative table, right? If we looked at the cleric turntable, it's using absolute numbers. But we're using relative numbers. So this will scale up. I think if it's -4 or less, you're kind of in that zone. It doesn't, just whatever. And of course, if you're above, I think +5, you don't really have a chance to do it. You can determine, but we're kind of staying in that range. So if you are level 1 and you're trying to cast a first level spell, you are at 0. You're at the 0 level. If you're at level 2, you're trying to cast a level 1 spell, that's your column. If you're at level 2 and you're trying to cast a 4 level spell, that's your column. Everybody follow? And then you roll 2d6, and then you see here on the results, you'll go to the matrix. Go to the matrix. Bo says they're planning on having a mage class that uses spell slots and or mana points to safely reliably cast spells, and then spells that anyone can use, but it's unsafe and unreliable. That's cool. Yeah, so this is kind of trying to bridge that gap between being totally safe and reliable and having that little bit. But there's that D in here, which is important. So there's a critical failure state, a delayed state, and a successful state. And then so if you're trying to cast a spell of your own level, you're only going to crit fail on a 2. And you're going to need a 7 to succeed. And then if you get a little bit less than that, then you get up in this delayed thing, then you fail, then you crit fail. Okay? So now let's go down to understanding the results of the table. Success indicates that the spell proceeds as cast. So whatever, or I guess I should say as described, right? It casts. Whatever the effect, whatever the spell is, it casts, it's fine. If you get delay, that indicates that the magic user is struggling to cast a spell. The magic user can extend the casting time to try to overcome the difficulty or let the spell fail. If the magic user chooses to extend the casting, they make an additional spell casting test. Each additional test increases the difficulty by 1 column. All right, so what does that mean? You're in the first round of a combat, let's say, and you cast, I'm going to cast Fireball. And let's say Fireball is, what is Fireball? Level 3 and you're level 2. So you roll on this +1 and you get a 6. It's delayed. So that means you're kind of at the round when you would have cast a spell, you're still casting. So you make the choice. Now we're going into round 2. Do I keep casting the spell or do I drop it? If I keep casting the spell, I can try again, but it's going to increase the difficulty by 1 column. So now it's going to come up here, and obviously it's taking an extra turn, or I can drop it. All right, so that's what that delay means. A failure indicates the casting failed. The memorized spell pattern, however, is not lost. So remember, we're no spell slots. So if you have that Fireball cast and it fails, you just don't cast the spell. It's not gone. However, on a crit fail, the casting has failed and the memorized spell pattern has been lost. The spell must be rememorized before it be cast again. And so that's your crit fail, you lose the spell. Now, I believe, and we'll come back because I have to remember exactly what the various caveats and things for. So that's what a crit fail does. And then if you get a 2, it's always a crit failure, and 12 is always a success, right? So you get those. Memorizing spells. A magic user can memorize a number of spells equal to their level. These spells may be of any level that they've managed to transcribe into their spell book. However, spell memorization takes days instead of hours. Specifically, for each level of spell, magic users must spend 1 day to study and memorize it. So this is kind of the cost thing. So you may think, okay, well, I just lost Fireball for a day. No, you've lost Fireball potentially for 3 or 4 days, depending on the level of the spell, which means you're going to have to go back to town. Like that spell is gone for this delve or adventure, whatever you want to call it. You're going to have to go back to town. You're going to have to spend days getting Fireball back. So it's a little bit harsher than just, well, I've lost it and then I can get it tomorrow. I can be at the campsite and I'll just memorize it in the morning. No, it's gone for, the idea was that that's kind of the risk reward, which is why you may want to fail a spell that you're delayed at if it's getting tough, because the more columns this goes up, right, the easier it is to crit fail. So if you end up at +3, there's a good chance you're going to crit fail something. So you may want to let something drop if it has. Take the fail. Okay, so now spell strain. A magic user can cast a number of spells equal to their level per hour with no ill effects. However, casting spells beyond that number becomes increasingly difficult. For every spell attempted over the hourly limit, increase the spell casting test difficulty by 1 column. So again, this was me attempting to say, well, okay, so we're taking away your spell slots. So you're going to get a bunch of spells, but you can't just, this is not to let you spam Fireball. So within an hour, you're going to get as many spells as you have levels. So you can get that Fireball if you're a first level magic user and you somehow end up with Fireball, you're going to be able to cast it, but you're going to cast it once an hour, or you're going to start taking on strain. Okay, so let's see. So for every spell attempted over the hourly limit, increase the spell casting test difficulty by 1 column. Any result of that test other than success indicates that the magic user is strained. While strained, the difficulty of all spell casting tests is increased by 2 columns per level of the spell attempted, and a result of a critical failure on a test also results in the magic user suffering arcane blowback equal to 1d4 damage per level of the spell being cast. Okay, so this is probably something that I would. So remember, this has been a while, and this was play by post. So I might simplify some of this, but the idea is you become if you try to cast a spell over your limit. So you're a first level magic user, you cast a spell, you don't wait an hour because maybe it's in dire needs. You decide to try that spell again, like magic missile. Try it again. If you don't succeed at that magic missile, so if you succeed the magic missile, you're okay. Nothing bad's happened. If you don't succeed, then you become strained. When you become strained, everything bumps up 2 levels of difficulty. Okay, and remember that then if you get a crit failure, you're also going to get damage. You're also going to start taking damage. So let's just go back. So you're a first level magic user and you have magic missile. You cast it once, you come back, you cast it again, and you try to cast it again. You become strained. If let's say you didn't succeed, all of a sudden that next magic missile or anything you're going to do, now you're up here at +2. All right. So that's bad. And that's per level of the spell attempted. So you can get a lot of strain. That strain can ramp up quickly. And then you're going to take that damage. To avoid strain, the magic user must rest for at least 10 minutes after an hour of spellcasting activity, which you should be doing anyway in the dungeon, right? You're supposed to rest. Theoretically, you're supposed to rest every 10 minutes in the dungeon. So if you just do your normally thing, you're going to avoid strain. So you should be able to continue casting 1 spell an hour, or if you get strained, you can get rid of that kind of, you can rest. Only 1 10-minute rest per hour is effective, but that's kind of like to counteract the strain, right? If you become strained, then you must spend a night's rest to overcome it. So you're going to have to go out. A night's rest spent overcoming strain does not heal any physical damage suffered by the magic user, and no natural healing takes place during this rest time. So you're going to have to heal your strain before you're able to heal yourself, heal your physical body. So you probably want to avoid strain, but it's there. See, I always like these things that give you an option with some kind of, I don't know what I call it, a push-pull, risk reward, I guess is what I like to call it. So there's that risk. If you're a first level magic user, you want to go wild willy casting all kinds of spells like you're the sorcerer's apprentice, go for it. But chances are bad things are going to happen, and they're going to tend to kind of cascade a bit. But if you need to, or you feel like you have to, you can. There'll just be consequences, but you can't. Okay, so then the next part is rituals. A magic user can mitigate the risks of casting a spell by casting it as a ritual. To cast a spell as a ritual, the magic user must spend at least 10 minutes preparing a ritual space. After the space is prepared, the magic user may spend 10 minutes per spell level to cast the spell, decreasing the difficulty of the spell casting by 1 column. So if you have the time, you can mitigate some of the difficulty by casting a ritual. That's probably not going to work for something like Fireball, unless you can get everybody to stand still for an hour, but that's there for you. And then the final bit, which is kind of more, I had some people who went kind of full chaos in that game, so I included this. And this would also work for NPC types. Ritual sacrifice. A magic user may sacrifice treasure equal to 200 XP per level of spell being cast, or a living creature of hit dice equal to double the spell level to decrease the spell casting difficulty by an additional column. Anything sacrificed as part of the ritual is destroyed, regardless of the outcome of the spell cast. So you can sacrifice treasure or somebody, something with some hit dice to also reduce the cost. So there you go. I like the way I still like this, and maybe I'll throw it in the rules. I'll probably have to rewrite the strain a little bit because I think it's a little bit complicated, and I think not that I lost the plot slightly, but I think it could be written maybe a little bit more simply. That did get dark. It did get dark, but hey, I mean, this to me also, this ritual sacrifice is also something for like just a little bit of mechanics on if there was like I know we don't often care when we're running like a big bad guy or some kind of evil antagonist. We don't usually write up the procedures for whatever ritual they're doing. Oh, we're summoning Orcus and we're doing it. But this was a little bit of me mechanizing that for the kind of evil types, either in the party or that are out there as to whatever spell they might be casting, why they need a whole troop of living sacrifices. That's why they're trying to they need to lower the difficulty of that spell to something that they can cast because it's some ridiculously high level spell. And, maybe they only have one shot at it. So they got to try to get the numbers down kind of thing. So it's just me kind of mechanizing that. But that was and I'll throw this I'll probably throw this in the mix. But like I said, it worked for me. And I think the players liked it because they had an opportunity to cast more spells, but it's not cantrips. I didn't want kind of pew pew laser magic where the magic user sits back. And I know people will say, I hear already, I understand the Magnus. Hey Magnus, no one actually asked me any questions, so I feel like this was kind of a fail in that part. But the idea behind this, I understand the idea of, there's no difference between, say, the magic user throwing a dart and them casting like Eldritch Blast. But for me, it has it just gives the setting a whole different feel. Whatever it is. So I didn't want that. I wanted them to be able to cast real spells. They're kind of regular spells. I also wanted them given the opportunity to try something like a first level magic user trying to cast a 4th level spell. I would probably, I think as I tweak this, maybe for putting it in that other document, I probably would love to have maybe take some more fun. The thing is, I don't want to do, as much as I enjoy it, the idea of having a table of weird things for each and every spell like DCC, it's just not what I want to do. Unless this was part of my own RPG, I wouldn't have all the spells to do anyway. But it's just, I might put in some general, like, hey, there are some things that can kind of happen. But this is just my way of being able to kind of enable the magic users, take some risk rewards, but there's definitely a price to be paid when they would crit fail a spell or push it too far or whatever. So like I said, it worked for me in that context. Not saying it's going to work for you, but it was interesting. And this will show up in this house rules doc I'm working on. This will show up in there. So then you guys will be able to take it and tear it apart. Bo, I am going to put together this doc, and it will probably show up on Itch and other places. There will probably be a free plain text version, and then maybe if you want a laid out version for a few bucks. Not there yet, but it won't be too long because a lot of this stuff is written out in some form. Just I'm kind of adding stuff from sort of memory and kind of going through my notes, and then these other docs that I prepared for different games, and I'm kind of putting them together. But it will end up somewhere. Yeah, Magnus, I have not watched any of the D&D 2024 stuff. I haven't really watched anything pro or anti D&D. It's one of those things that I'm frustrated by some of the creators who just have I don't know, they've just gotten embroiled in just constantly posting sort of D&D hot take, D&D or WotC hot takes. And it's not that their hot takes are even all that hot or are wrong. It's just I don't care. And I wish that people, especially if you're in the boat of, which I am, of like I'm not really interested in it. Why do we keep harping on it? Because I feel like all it does is bring them attention. Patreon exclusive. Yep, I mean Patreon will probably get it first. Yeah, so I have a Patreon. I don't really do enough to thank and pay back the people who support me. So this will probably go to Patreon. Probably I did put a draft of something up there. Maybe I'll throw this as it is onto the Patreon. So if folks want to see this, I already have a PDF of it, just sitting here. I'll throw that up. But yeah, the completed one will go on. What I've been doing with the last few things is plain text for free, laid out for a little bit of money, because that does take me a fair amount more time. I try to find illustrations and do things like that. But for the plain text for these, so it'll some combination of that. But it will be available. The hot takes get views. Yeah, I know. But you just think at some point, I mean, I guess no. Everybody always wants more views. I get it. It's just it's annoying to me. Magnus says they've been watching the channels pro D&D. Yeah, it's good that they're still out there, I suppose. Just people want to, that the Schadenfreude is so strong with folks, but I feel like it's kind of I don't know if it does what they think it does. Because I think the people who just love it are the people who already are anti D&D, and it's like people just want to watch WotC burn, I guess. Which fair to them, but I don't need to keep reading about it or hearing about it. Megan says he already knows what the hot takes are going to be. Yeah, it's the other thing. Like I just the amount of videos I see where the thumbnails are like some variation of WotC's done it again, or WotC something gets worse, whatever, and it's got someone in it with a face palm expression. I'm like, I just skip. Don't need it. Don't want it. Why am I wasting time on it? I'm not interested in it, so I'm not disappointed in what they do. I don't even know if there's any point in getting disappointed in what corporations do. Corporations are going to do corporate things. This should no longer be a surprise to anybody. Certainly not me. The OGL one was probably like I was a little bit maybe shocked down, but even then I was like, well, corporations are going to do corporate things, so it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, before I go, any questions? So no one actually gave me any questions, which is fine. It's fine. While you guys are trying to meet any questions, I'll see if there's any last docs for me to share. Okay, that I will get rid of that. Let me just see, where was I? I was looking. Cyberpunk dystopia? Yeah, we are definitely in something like that. Oh, I had these. Oh yeah, hold on a minute. I got more. Oh, this isn't much. This is kind of very Lamentations, but I'll share it. Let's see, was there anything else? Just scrolling through. I had some. did the initial combat actions. Okay, yeah, I'll this is last one, I guess. Okay, so this is very obviously very Lamentations. Yeah, Bo, yeah, probably same time tomorrow, more or less. What time did I do today? Probably earlier. I'm gonna try to go earlier tomorrow. All right, so the specialist house rules. This is for Lamentations. And I think this, so the reason why, for context, the Lamentations has a specialist, which is their version of the rogue. The difference being that the specialist can essentially level up a bunch of different abilities. They're not trapped to the thief skills. So the specialist, I can look it up here because I have it here. The specialist, it was a really good innovation. Look, I'm not a, the brand Lamentations, I'm not a fan of. But I'm not going to pretend that this wasn't the game I was using or anything like that. So I'm not going to, I am not going to claim that somehow, I was doing something else. No. And they did do good things, even though I don't like to recommend this anymore just because of all the drama around it. But they did good stuff in this core book. Let me see. Where's the specialist? 17. So the thing with the specialist was that they could learn a bunch of different skills. So they could learn, for example, architecture, bushcraft, which was their kind of survival skill, climbing, languages, searching, sleight of hand, sneak attack, stealth, or tinkering, kind of small traps. So these are things that kind of will match up to a lot of the things like dwarves, architecture. You can kind of tell things about the structure. Okay, survival, like a ranger, climbing, like all that stuff, right? So whereas everyone kind of starts off with a 1 and 6, specialists can up their level, can get more. Now the issue in my campaign was that I didn't have any specialists. Nobody was a specialist. So I created these rules so that we could kind of fold the specialist. So if you think about, well, in a game without thieves, what would you do with if you had this thief skill system, so to speak, but just didn't have any thieves? And maybe think, well, maybe if you wanted to keep the skill system, kind of like and in Lamentations everything is X and 6, but you don't have any thieves, but you don't want to just have everything be, or you want to give people a chance to do more. This is what I was doing. I was allowing it because we had none of our players were specialists, so I decided, okay, you can if you wanted to, and I don't even know if anyone ended up taking me up on it, but I had this system in place of, okay, well, if you want to kind of do sort of what the specialist does, then you can do it. So, but like I said, I don't even know if this ended up being tested very much. So that's another caveat. So this is my specialist house rule for probationary period, right? So I was trying it out. The following house rules regarding specialists will be in effect. And I have some bullet points. A specialist can multi-class into any other single class. After second level, non-specialists can acquire skills beyond the base 1 in 6 chance at a cost shown in the table below with the following limitations. They cannot raise a single skill higher than their level, nor past a maximum of 6, and they cannot acquire more skill levels than their current level, i.e. a third level character, i.e. at their level, a character can raise up to 3 skills, but none higher than 3 and 6. So there you go. And so then I had some costs associated. And then I think so I think what I was trying to do, and I never got super far, so I don't know how well this would have worked. It's not been tested. That some of those training days might have made things prohibitive. So this will take basically a month, and this one close to 2 months, more or less. So skill costs are cumulative. To raise a skill from 1 to 3 to 1 to 3 and 6, the cost is 3,375 in XP. Oh yeah, and gold, right? So that was the other thing. You had to pay in experience points in gold. So you would lose. You would that XP you were spending would get lost. Essentially, you're spending it to get this. You're not. It doesn't go towards your main level and gold. And then and then you have to go to a qualified trainer, and you spend 9 days in training, and there you have it, right? So this was, and the reason why I had this is, like I said, we didn't have any specialists in the game. So I thought, oh, why not? This is something I could see tweaking for using for using a system that basically has standardized X and 6 for Thief and other things. I could see having the same system come in. I might change these up because I think I might tweak this a bit to probably lower it a little bit because I don't want everybody to be like 9th level and everything is. I know that probably the math doesn't work, but I might shrink that down. But that was basically my house rule for essentially people being able to pick up specialist skills, which I think was good. All right, folks. Any last questions? Any last thoughts? I mean, yeah, a lot of folks got angry. Look, I was angry about the OGL. I think it was a stupid move. They lost a lot of goodwill amongst people, and I still read about people on Reddit or other forums, Reddit, Twitter, wherever, where they're leaving the ecosystem, and one of their driving factors was the OGL. So it definitely had a negative fact, and I think it was good for a lot of the content creators to shine a light on that and not let them sort of skate by, because the OGL is something that a lot of people may not be very aware of, but it was there, and it was the backbone of a lot of indie kind of stuff. I mean, so many books from the 3rd edition days onward were kind of allowed to come forth because the OGL was there. So trying to kind of undo it, remove it, that was a really big, bad deal. So I don't, I certainly don't hold anything against people who are bringing the light. I think that's good. I think to see what ends up happening though is, or what happened was that folks in their zeal were just not honest with themselves or their audiences about themselves. So you'd see these channels come out and say, I'm not talking about any more D&D stuff. And then a couple months later, quietly, without fanfare, they're talking about D&D and WotC again. And why? Because they saw their numbers. And the ones that were more honest looked at it and said, holy cow, I may have taken it for granted, but a bunch of my audience is interested in D&D and WotC. So if I want to keep, making what I'm making and doing what I'm doing, hey, Bo, see you tomorrow, then I better start talking about D&D and WotC again. Even though I had said I'm never going to talk about them again. It just, the economics of their channel drove them to do that, which I understand. I don't have those economics. The little swings that I get in viewership and whatnot aren't enough one way or another to sway me to do one thing or another. I just don't have the numbers involved. Hopefully someday I'll get there and I'll have to make those tough choices. But it was interesting. I was watching one of these Q&As from Tested, Adam Savage's Tested channel, and he mentioned, someone asked about Mythbusters and if they'd ever gotten, people wanted to kind of, if they ever got offers from companies to bust myths, like using their stuff, like, hey, we're going to selling on a car and we're going to use a Ford car to, whatever, to kind of make these brands look better in light of this kind of busted myth kind of thing. And Adam said that one of the things that he was very grateful to working with Jamie, his partner on Mythbusters, was they never did that. And he said something that I think in this kind of context rings true. You only have one chance to sell your integrity, right? So you should hold on to that thing. And for them, even though they could have made a lot of money doing something like that, their integrity was worth more. And so they didn't. So even though they could have made a lot of money, they held to their guns. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of these creators, they sold it for one thing or another. And I understand it. It's a very human thing. If I was in their spot and I look at the numbers and whatever, maybe I would be doing it. But, after the thing, I said, I'm not going to cover any WotC stuff, even though I would cover WotC and D&D stuff, and I haven't. But, people won't generally come to my channel for that. So, at the same time, like, I'm sure someone can make the argument, it's like, I'm not risking much. I am not risking much, not really talking about that stuff anymore. But you know what? The other thing is, well, don't say that. Don't say, I'm not going to talk about it anymore, and then talk about it. And some of the other ones will say, they'll put it on the viewer's standpoint. They'll say something like, well, If people wouldn't watch, then I wouldn't do it. But they're watching, so I'm doing it. And it's like that's a really circular. Are they watching? You know, whatever. So I just it frustrates me that some folks who I think when they're on about their own stuff, they do some really interesting stuff, but they're not doing that because they're busy grinding on the let's make money from WotC's misery that I've claimed I have no interest in anymore, but I'm doing about it anyway. Tristan says, I feel better making what I make, and some people like it, and that's good enough for me. Yeah, absolutely. That's where I am. All right, so what is this? Oh, are we doing a One Ring reference here, Magnus? Free rules for the third parties and their Kickstarters. Free rules for the grognards on their blogs and forums. Free rules for the streamers and influencers doomed to be co-opted. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, look, I mean, I get free stuff, right? Free League has been kind enough to send me some stuff. Modifius, right? I got to go back. I'm going to probably go back to Dune later in the week. Has something. So, you know, I've done that. I just try to be very honest about where everything's coming from, what I'm doing. And, you know, they've been like, you know, maybe I'm just small enough or whatever that I can say this, there are no strings attached to anything that I've gotten, but I'm such a small fry in the grand scheme of things that I'm probably beneath strings. I'm probably beneath such strings. In any case, folks, this stuff will end up in, like I said, in my house rules doc. I will probably throw these up. So if you are a patron or you feel like becoming a patron, which I never talk about, I mention it off and on. I think the lowest tier is $1 and the highest tier is like $3. Maybe it's $5. I don't know. It's pretty darn nothing. If you feel like doing that, you'll get these ahead of time. Otherwise, you have to wait for me, which given my track record, it means you might be waiting a while. But I am trying to get it done. These will end up in my house rules doc. You could check it out. I think the spellcasting matrix, I think it still works. I've kind of done things differently, but that's part of a different whole kind of unified system. And this is more of a plug and play into sort of my existing BX system. So it probably makes more sense to throw in this doc. But yeah, that's all I got, folks. So enjoy the rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching or listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I'll talk to you later. Bye now.